Good morning. It's May 3rd here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour, starting with the Yoon summit scheduled here in the capital city this weekend. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida will come to Seoul for a two-day visit from Sunday for summit talks with President Yoon Suk-yeol. National security advisors of the two countries will meet today to discuss the summit agenda. U.S. regional bank stocks slide for the second day after the closure of First Republic Bank. Investors still fear that we have yet to see the end of the banking crisis. Here in South Korea, a group of doctors and nursing assistants are holding a partial strike to protest against the recently passed Nursing Act that clarifies the roles and responsibilities of nurses. A general strike is set for May 17th. Seoul's top office has made it official that Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida will come to South Korea this weekend for summit talks with President Yoon Suk-yeol. Now, Kishida's Seoul trip, followed by Yoon's Tokyo trip in March, is expected to play to kickstart the official resumption of direct diplomacy between the nations. Our foreign affairs correspondent Choi Min-jung starts us off.
Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida will be visiting South Korea at the end of this week to meet with South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol. This is according to Seoul's presidential office on Tuesday. Kishida will be paying a working visit for 2 days starting Sunday, with the summit anticipated to take place on the first day. Japan's foreign ministry also announced the trip in a press release, stating the two leaders agreed to resume regular visits to each other's country, or what they call shuttle diplomacy. The upcoming visit will be the first by a Japanese prime minister for a bilateral meeting in 12 years. Talking to reporters earlier on Tuesday, the Japanese leader said the summit will be a good opportunity to exchange honest opinions on ways to develop Seoul-Tokyo relations.
I expect it will be a great opportunity to give impetus to our shuttle diplomacy and have a heart-to-heart exchange of our views on accelerating Japan-South Korea ties and drastically changing the global situation.
Now, eyes are on whether this will lead to a sincere apology from Japan for the use of forced labor during its occupation of Korea. During the previous summit in Tokyo, Yoon and Kishida were able to mend soured ties, as the South Korean president proposed a plan to compensate the Korean victims of Japan's wartime forced labor through a third party instead of the Japanese companies held responsible. However, the summit concluded without a sincere apology or response from Japan. Seoul's foreign ministry said Tuesday that it expects Seoul-Tokyo ties to improve further in the future as there are more opportunities for the leaders to meet. Later this month, South Korea, Japan, and the U.S. will reportedly hold a trilateral summit on the sidelines of the G7 summit in Hiroshima. There, the nations are expected to discuss security cooperation against North Korea's growing nuclear threats. The three-way talk comes amid heightened diplomatic tensions as North Korea, China, and Russia criticized Yoon and Biden's new deterrence strategy, dubbed the Washington Declaration, inked during their recent summit in Washington. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
And to outline the major agenda items for the upcoming Yoon-Kishida summit talks, the national security advisors of both countries will meet here in Seoul. That's South Korea's Cho Tae-yong and his Japanese counterpart Takeo Akiba. They'll sit down for talks on Wednesday. According to South Korea's presidential office, Akiba's two-day visit will make him the first Secretary General of Japan's National Security Secretariat to visit the country since 2014. Cho and Akiba are scheduled to discuss a wide range of issues, including preparations for the summit, the two nations' bilateral relations, North Korea, and other local and global matters of mutual interest. Their talks will also include the first meeting of the Economic Security Dialogue that the two leaders of Seoul and Washington agreed to launch during the Tokyo summit back in March. President Yoon Suk-yeol on Tuesday gave a briefing on his U.S. state visit during a cabinet meeting. During his address, he stressed that the Washington Declaration has upgraded the security alliance between the two countries to a new paradigm. Our Kim Do-yeon has more.
President Yoon Suk-yeol said the Washington Declaration signed during the summit with the U.S. last week upgraded the alliance into, quote, a new paradigm based on nuclear force. This as he broadcast live his opening remarks for a cabinet meeting Tuesday and took matters into his own hands in hailing the achievements of his state visit to the U.S. last week.
상대의 선의에 기대는 가짜 평화가 아닌 압도적인 힘에 의한 평화로 미래 세대들이 안심하고 꿈을 키워나갈 수 있는 튼튼한 안보를 구축할 것입니다. 앞으로 미 핵자산의 운용에 관한 정보 공유, 공동 계획, 공동 실행 과정에서 워싱턴 선언을 잘 구체화해 나가는 것이 그 내용을 잘 채워 나가는 것이 중요합니다.
President Yoon added that the South Korea-U.S. Nuclear Consultative Group is more practical than NATO's nuclear planning group, as it involves only two countries with more frequent communication. He also said his state visit will pave the way for expanding the bilateral alliance in areas other than traditional security. Also noteworthy was President Yoon's repeating of the word freedom more than 10 times during the 16-minute speech. He tied freedom as a value that all aspects of the expansion and cooperation are based on, including economic and culture exchanges.
특히 한미 양국은 자유의 가치를 공유하고 경제적으로 긴밀히 인프라가 연결되어 있기 때문에 프렌드 쇼어링을 확대해 갈 수 있는 최적의 파트너입니다.
Specifically, he said the combination of South Korea's manufacturing capacity and the core technology of the U.S. could create great synergy, as the two will be engaging more on AI and quantum technologies. President Yoon called on his aides for follow-up measures to make sure the new cooperations with the U.S. create more opportunities for younger generations. He motivated them, saying that with the first anniversary coming up for the administration, they should combine efforts to create a country with abundant freedom and innovation. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Another freight train derailed by a blast in the Russian city of Bryansk in a region bordering Ukraine on Tuesday. Russian officials say pro-Ukrainian sabotage groups were behind the attack. Lee Seung-jae reports.
An explosion derailed a freight train on Tuesday in the Russian city of Bryansk, which borders Ukraine. The latest incident marks the second straight day that a Russian freight train has been derailed. According to the Bryansk regional governor, an unidentified explosive device went off near the Shinetskaya rail station, causing a locomotive and several wagons to derail. Although he made no mention of who may have been responsible, other Russian officials blamed the recent derailments on pro-Ukrainian sabotage groups, who they say have been behind multiple attacks in the border region since Russia invaded Ukraine in February 2022. Meanwhile, Russian media is reporting that Ukraine, which is preparing for a major springtime counteroffensive, may also carry out terrorist attacks in major cities in Russia and border areas with Ukraine to coincide with Russia's Victory Day celebrations on May 9th. According to the Russian daily MK on Tuesday, Russian military experts have warned that Ukraine could launch small but devastating terrorist attacks on Russian cities before a major offensive. In the meantime, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said Tuesday that with China trying to mediate peace talks between Russia and Ukraine, Beijing must first recognize Ukraine's territorial sovereignty and independence. During the Fox News interview, Blinken also stressed that dialogue with the people of Ukraine is also important, as they are the real victims of the prolonged war. The top U.S. diplomat also noted that a Ukrainian counteroffensive may happen soon, adding that success on the battlefield is the best and fastest way to arrive at negotiations that will create a just and lasting peace. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
The summit between the leaders of South Korea and the U.S. drew notable attention from overseas, particularly those deeply interested or involved in regional issues, including Korean Peninsula issues. For more on this, we're joined by Professor Song Se-ryun from Kyunghee University this morning. Welcome back to the program, Professor.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. Now, the U.S. has stressed its so-called nuclear partnership with South Korea under the Washington Declaration is aimed at enhancing deterrence against North Korea's provocations, and also that countered criticisms from Pyongyang and Beijing. Professor, what does this mean? I mean, what does it say about the Seoul-Washington alliance?
Well, the obvious thing is that we strengthened the security alliance in the East Asia region. It took a form of reaffirming the past commitments about regional security, but with the specific actions spelled out this time, namely, we have a nuclear consultation group that will meet for better coordination with the U.S. on the nuclear matters, and also the U.S.'s strategic asset, namely the nuclear sub, will be making more regular rounds. So, as you said, this is in response to the ever-growing security threat posed by the North, but also there is a potential instability posed by China's overture to Taiwan. So I think the Seoul-Washington alliance is in the context of the East Asian security alliance with the U.S., but also with Japan and Korea playing the part. So I think that there's a kind of a building up process going on where Korea is restoring the shuttle diplomacy with Japan for that purpose. And also going forward, I think that the better arrangement in terms of security and the economic issues should be forthcoming if those building blocks are in place.
Right. And obviously, and as widely expected, North Korea was not happy. They expressed a show of discontent, saying that the Washington Declaration reflects the most hostile and aggressive will of action against the regime. Now, why do you think the regime decided not to carry out military activities and provocations? And I know this question is hard to answer, but when do you think they will do so? Will it be anytime soon?
Well, there's a little bit of pause. I think the North has been vocally critical about the strength in the security alliance between U.S. and the Korea, but they also issued the threat of provocations, as expected. And if you look at the recent actions, they have been launching ballistic missiles with pretty good regularity, 2-3 times a month this year. And so I think that the expectation is that they'll resume their regularly scheduled provocations. So nobody will be surprised when they do. I think that the fact that they're very nervous about this arrangement, on one hand, some would think that we're doing the right thing. Or on the other hand, I think that there is a heightened risk about the provocations and their continuous march towards having more nuclear weapons and securing the ICBM capability. So there is a increased tension, but I think that for that particular reason, I think that it's more important to have a united front in the East Asian region with the United States and also with Japan.
Right, and the North will have more excuses to launch military provocations, namely the upcoming Yoon-Kishida summit and the trilateral summit among Yoon, Biden, and Kishida later this month.
Right. I think that it's in the same focus. It's not just U.S. Talk about the security matters, but Japan is a key part of this whole the fabric of the security issues. And also, I think that as neighbors, the economic issues are becoming more important in the region and the world. So I would think that this bedrock of the security arrangement could be a springboard for Korea to begin talks with China and Japan. In fact, there's a trilateral talks with China and also Japan are being planned. I think that the key idea is that we can walk and chew at the same time, so we can put the security matters down, but at the same time, by engaging in a dialogue, we can talk about what kind of economic arrangements we can build in the region. I think that there is a greater need for China to promote the economic development going forward. So I think that opens a little bit of chance for the players in the region to talk about economic matters at the same time putting the security measures and the arrangement kind of in the side.
Right. And also, some experts say that South Korea became closer to the U.S., but moved away from China and Russia. Now, Professor Song, before we let you go, what do you think South Korea should take in terms of stance, in your opinion, from now on?
Well, it's $1 million question. We have tried being friendly with China, and we tried the equal distance diplomacy before. But this Korean Peninsula, it comes with literally a territory. We are always surrounded by the big powers and sometimes the bullies. I think what is important is that we have to be clear about our goals in security and economic measures. What is on our side is that we are stronger in economic terms, and also militarily, we are becoming a power to be reckoned with. So from the position as a strength, I think that we have to spell out what would work in terms of the pursuing the peace, but at the same time, economic prosperity in the region. And that has to be shared with all the key players in the region through dialogue.
Right, walking on eggshells for now, but we are heading to the right direction when it comes to security alliance and more in other fields.
Right. I think that the action that is taken by the president and the administration is in the larger sense, I think is the right direction. And the one thing we have to be careful about is what kind of details that we put in, so that it's not just ideals, but it has to be a workable solution and something that requires a lot of creativity.
Right, so that they come into tangible outcomes in the end.
Right.
All right, thank you, Professor Song, so much for your insight this morning, as usual.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Now, over in the U.S., stocks saw a sharp decline followed by the takeover of First Republic Bank by JP Chase. Investors are still afraid that the banking crisis not over yet. Our Song Yujin has the details.
Stocks in the U.S. tumbled on Tuesday following the purchase of First Republic Bank by banking giant JP Chase. The Dow Jones Industrial Average fell 367.17 points, or 1.08% on Tuesday, ending the session at 33,684.53. The S&P 500 slipped 1.16%, and the tech-heavy Nasdaq lost 1.08%. Analysts attributed the tumbling stocks to investors' fears that the turmoil in the banking sector could spread to other regional banks after witnessing Tuesday's takeover of First Republic, the third bank failure in the U.S. this year. Some of the sharpest drops came from small and mid-sized banks. Shares of Los Angeles-based PacWest Bancorp fell 27.8%, Western Alliance Bank was down 15.1%, and Comerica lost 12.4%. The KBW Regional Banking Index fell 5.52% to its lowest point since December 2020. Big banks were no exception. JP Chase, whose shares saw a 2% gain after the announcement of its takeover deal on Monday, fell 1.6%. Wells Fargo fell 4.7% and Bank of America dropped 3.9%. Experts also pointed to the Federal Reserve's upcoming rate hike decision on Wednesday as another factor that led to the drop. Many are expecting the Fed to raise its key interest rate by 25 basis points to 5.25%, the highest in 16 years.
The consensus is that they're going to do another quarter hike tomorrow. What will they say and what they won't say? And that's the huge question mark for the markets tomorrow.
Investors tend to be cautious if a rate hike is likely, as higher rates mean the stock market will be declining in value. 송유진, Arirang News.
Today, here in South Korea, groups of doctors and nursing assistants are going on a partial strike, protesting against the recently passed Nursing Act that gives nurses more independence in their duties. Part of a coalition of some 13 medical workers organizations, they're working for shortened hours in the morning and will take part in rallies in the afternoon. They're calling for President Yoon to veto the bill. If not, they're planning on a general strike on May 17th, involving some 4 million doctors and nursing assistants, which will have a far greater impact on the healthcare system. The Nursing Act clarifies and expands the scope of nursing's duties, as opposed to being under the guidance of physicians like before. Doctors see it as an intrusion of their duties, while nursing assistants are concerned about being left out by the act.
Good morning, I'm Matthew Ashley, and we now turn over to stories from around the world. We begin in Kenya, where a religious cult leader accused of encouraging hundreds of followers to starve themselves to death is facing charges of murder, terrorism and child trafficking. Paul Nthenge Mackenzie, a self-proclaimed pastor and founder of the Good News International Church, appeared in court in the Kenyan town of Malindi on Tuesday, alongside 8 other defendants. It was decided to move the case to a high court in Mombasa, where the defendants will be held in a maximum security prison. Mackenzie allegedly told his followers that they would meet Jesus if they starved themselves. Authorities have since confirmed that 109 people linked to his cult are dead, most of them children. Autopsies confirmed that most died of starvation, with 2 people likely dying from asphyxiation. The death toll is expected to rise as another 300 people are reportedly still missing. Now turning over to the United Kingdom, a man has been arrested for allegedly throwing what is thought to be shotgun cartridges into the grounds of Buckingham Palace on Tuesday evening, local time. The man was taken into custody on suspicion of having an offensive weapon. Police later found he was in possession of a knife. A controlled explosion was carried out at the scene as a precautionary measure. The incident comes just 4 days ahead of the official coronation of the king, but reports say King Charles III and Queen Consort Camilla were not at the palace at the time. According to authorities, the matter is not terror-related and may be an isolated mental health incident. Now, in a crackdown on e-cigarettes and the tobacco industry, Australia is banning recreational vaping. The government on Tuesday said it aims to ban all disposable vapes and the import of non-prescription vapes. It also aims to limit nicotine levels in e-cigarettes and to ensure they are sold solely to help smokers quit. They will only be sold in pharmacies with pharmaceutical-type packaging, and a selection of flavors will be banned. The new measure comes amid an increasing number of teens vaping. Although access to vaping products already requires a prescription, it has not stopped these from being widely available through illegal markets. Vaping is considered a safer alternative to tobacco-based cigarettes, but health experts warn it may cause long-term harm. And finally, football icon Lionel Messi has been suspended from his club Paris Saint-Germain for a trip to Saudi Arabia without the club's permission. The Argentina captain is a tourism ambassador for Saudi Arabia. He had reportedly asked his club for permission to do commercial work for 2 days in Saudi Arabia, but was denied. The suspension means he will not train or play for PSG over 2 weeks and will miss the League One matches against Troyes and Ajaccio. His pay will also be docked. Messi's contract at the Paris club is set to expire this summer.
Good morning. It is so green everywhere around this time, and other than big gaps in ratings, the weather has been quite pleasant for the last couple of days. Today, warm southwesterly winds will bring up afternoon highs to warmer than norms in central parts of the country, feeling more like early summer under bright skies. Even the air quality will be normal to good nationwide, while southern provinces will see more clouds and sunshine with cooler highs. Enjoy the warmth and sunshine if you can today. We are expecting a weather shift from tomorrow to murky and wet conditions. It will start to rain from Jeju late this afternoon, gradually spreading to Jeollado province by tomorrow morning. Then the entire country will have rain from tomorrow afternoon. It could pour down on Children's Day this Friday along with strong winds, so do plan accordingly for the day. Rain continues until Saturday, which is Ippa, the beginning of summer on the seasonal calendar. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
That wraps up today's New Day at Arirang. Thanks for watching.